The skies above Skyfire City trembled as Vyam Kintian sect, master of the Blood Sun sect, strode through the air. Imperial might surged like rolling waves of flame dying, the clouds crimson as bloodlit sword chi tore through the wind and crashed down upon the central plaza. The crowd fell prostrate. The elders trembled. A true martial emperor had unleashed his wrath. At the heart of the storm, a white-robed youth remained standing, his sleeves fluttering in the raging gale. Thum Tinha lifted his gaze toward the collapsing sea of fire, his eyes calm as a midnight lake. Kneel and return the thunder. Ancient scripture. Vyam Kinthian's voice boomed like thunder. No one believed anyone would dare face imperial might. Yet at the very instant, the sword chi struck the ground, Thum Tinha merely raised his hand. A sliver of moonlight thin as a strand of silk drifted across the sky. There was no deafening explosion. No violent collision. Only the span of a single breath. The sea of fire split in two. Imperial might shattered like fractured glass. The entirety of Skyfire City fell into absolute silence. And for the first time, a flicker of shock surfaced in Vyam Kinthian's eyes. The silence after the crescent slash was even more terrifying than the imperial pressure before it. Vyam Kinthian lowered his sword. The look he gave Thum Tinha was no longer disdain, it was scrutiny. He had not come to kill. He had come to reclaim what belonged to the Blood Sun sect. The Thunder Ancient Scripture is the sect's sacred heirloom. By keeping it, you are provoking the Blood Sun sect. Only then did the surrounding crowd realize the youth before them held in his hands the supreme secret art of a great sect. But Thum Tinha merely smiled faintly. A sacred heirloom. Then why did it end up wandering outside your sect? The question was light as the wind, yet it darkened Vyam Kinthian's expression. Years ago, an internal rebellion within the Blood Sun sect had scattered the Thunder Ancient Scripture. If that truth spread, the sect's prestige would suffer a devastating blow. This was no longer about a cultivation manual. It was about honor, power, and the balance of forces. Kill Thum Tinha. No guarantee of victory. Buy back the secret art, the price would be enormous. And Thum Tinha understood one thing clearly. What his opponent needed was the strongest bargaining chip in his hand. After that tense moment of locked gazes, Vyam Kintian ultimately chose the second path. Not war, but a transaction. Inside, a temporarily sealed grand hall of Skyfire City, the two sat facing each other. The imperial aura had been withdrawn, yet the pressure in the air remained as heavy as a mountain. Vyam Kinthian placed a black wooden box on the table. Inside lay the heartwood of the Azure Spirit Tree, a supreme wood element treasure, nearing the level of origin itself, its spiritual energy so dense that even the surrounding space seemed to soften. Add 8 billion mid-grade spirit stones. In exchange for the Thunder Ancient Scripture, there was no longer any threat in his tone, only calculation. Thum Tinha gave a slight nod. He understood clearly he had won this round of the game. The transaction was completed, and the Ancient Scripture was returned. But as he departed Skyfire City, Thum Tinha's gaze remained cold. Because he knew Vyam Kinthian would not stop here. Sure enough, the news spread swiftly. The Blood Sun sect had begun mobilizing its forces, secretly pressuring other factions to relinquish mining rights to the profound Thunder Vein. A greater struggle was quietly taking shape. And Thum Tinha, carrying the heartwood of the Azure Spirit Tree, set out for Windcloud City, where an inter-realm grand array awaited. The true journey had only just begun. 3 days later, Windcloud City emerged beneath a curtain of heavy gray mist. But instead of the order expected from an inter-realm teleportation hub, chaos reigned. Rumors spread through every street and alley. The inter-realm grand array had been destroyed after a dispute over usage priority between two major sects. Martial cultivators packed the city. Inns were overflowing. Fights erupted over nothing more than a glance. The tension in the air was as taut as a drawn bowstring. Thum Tinha stood before the cracked remains of the formation platform, clearly sensing the severed flow of spiritual energy. At the current pace of repairs, it would take at least half a month to restore, but he did not have half a month. On the other side of the realm, a life and death appointment was waiting. While weighing his options, he and his companions entered the tavern Cold Plum Pavilion to gather information. It was there that the greedy gaze of a disciple from the Yama sect fell upon Lam Tuet Ni. A taunting remark. A hand that reached too far. No one realized that in that instant the turning point of the entire journey had arrived. And Windcloud City was about to welcome a new storm. With a single sweep of Thum Tinha's hand, everything crossed the point of no return. Inside the Cold Plum Pavilion, the lewd laughter had not yet faded when a streak of crescent light flashed. The young master of the Yama sect, Zhao Wuya, fell before he could even draw his weapon. Blood seeped into the wooden floorboards, the metallic scent spreading faster than the gasps of shock. The tavern went deathly silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Yama sect, the most powerful demonic force in the northern region, had never allowed anyone to touch their pride and live. In less than an hour, all of Windcloud City trembled. Yama sect disciples sealed off the main thoroughfares. A public kill order was issued. Rumors spread like wildfire the killer was merely a young cultivator. Lam Tuit Nai's face drained of color. The Grand Array was still in ruins. The city was now under lockdown, and as a dark shadow stretched across the tavern's entrance, a cold voice rang out. Hand him over, or all of you will be buried with him. The true young sect master Zhao Xuanxia had arrived. The crisis had officially erupted. Zhao Xuanxia's arrival was not merely a threat, it was a sentence. Behind him, 3 martial venerables stood in a triangular formation, their auras interwoven as they sealed the surrounding space. More than a dozen martial emperors spread out to block every exit. The tavern had been compressed into an invisible cage. Bad news followed bad news. The city lord of Windcloud declared neutrality, refusing to intervene. The Lin clan, fearing implication, publicly severed ties with Lam Tuet Ni. The factions that had once wavered fell silent beneath the overwhelming might of the Yama sect. The teleportation array remained fractured. No escape route. No reinforcements. No time. Zhao Xuanxia stepped forward, his voice glacial. You killed my brother, and still dare stand here. The pressure of a martial venerable crashed down. The wooden floor splintered and cracked. Lam Tuet Ni clutched Thum Tin Ha's sleeve tightly. For the first time her gaze wavered. If he handed her over, perhaps he might still have a chance to escape. In that moment, every path seemed sealed. All hope appeared lost. Beneath the mountain-like pressure, Thum Tin Ha did not retreat a single step. As Zhao Xuanxia's martial venerable aura crushed downward, splintering the wooden floor, Thum Tin Ha merely raised a hand. A thin layer of luminous runes flickered into existence, dissolving most of the force. His expression was terrifyingly calm. You want to kill me? Then first ask whether this city can afford it. With that, he flicked out a command token engraved with ancient sigils, the insignia of the sacred alchemy hall. At the same time, he strode toward the shattered formation platform in the plaza, and began repairing the core formation nodes in full view of everyone. In mere moments, the previously chaotic spiritual currents began to circulate once more. The crowd erupted in whispers. A martial venerable could inspire fear, but a 9th grade formation master could make an entire city reconsider. Several neutral factions began to waver. The city lord could not remain indifferent if the Grand Array were restored by someone of such standing. For the first time, Zhao Xuanxia hesitated. And in that instant the lesson became clear: within the balance of power, brute strength was only part of the equation. Value and influence were the true deciding cards. Zhao Xuanxia's hesitation lasted only a single breath. The honor of the Yama sect would not allow him to retreat before a crowd. With a furious shout, black chi erupted behind him like demonic wings unfurling. The 3 martial venerables closed in, simultaneously sealing off every path of escape. Kill. The air exploded. At that exact moment, the final formation node beneath Thum Tin Ha's hand clicked into place. Spiritual light surged from the Grand Array, linking its runes together like a net of stars. He turned, his voice calm. Moonshadow. Heavenbreaker. A colossal crescent radiance tore through the black chi, slamming directly into Zhao Xuanxia. The shockwave swept across the plaza, forcing even the 3 martial venerables backward. The young sect master coughed up blood, his eyes filled with disbelief. Before the Yama sect could launch another counterattack, a pillar of teleportation light engulfed Thum Tin Ha and his companions. Blinding brilliance. When it faded, only shattered stone remained in the plaza, and the fury burning in Zhao Xuanxia's gaze. Windcloud City trembled in the aftermath. And Thum Tin Ha had stepped onto a new battlefield, leaving behind an enmity that could never be reconciled.